Introduction to the Book of Ruth. A rare bond of love. Ruth and Naomi lost everything except their care for each other. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. May the Lord deal with me with ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. According to Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 to 17. Ruth and Naomi were unlikely friends. A generation apart, one young and strong, the other past middle age. Stranger still, one was the other's mother-in-law and came from a completely different ethnic and religious background. Who would have put them together? They had lost everything when their husbands died. With no man to rely on, their lives were at risk in those rough and tough times. No one else would come to their defense. They only had each other. The Woman's Initiative. The Book of Ruth is not two women against the world, but rather it shows the women taking initiative to find, by God's help, a man who would care for them. A woman's initiative rarely gets so direct as in Ruth. At her mother-in-law's direction, Ruth located where Boaz, a relative, was camping out. She waited until dark, then crept to his feet and lay down. When Boaz awoke and found her, he didn't have to be told what was on her mind. She wanted him for a husband. Flattered, he didn't let another son set before making the legal arrangements for marriage. Society, the way God had designed it, encouraged men like Boaz to help the needy. For instance, by Old Testament law, a farmer had to leave some of the grains behind so that poor people like Ruth could harvest it. And also by law, a helpless widow had to be taken into the home of her husband's family. This was the law by which Boaz claimed Ruth. Check on chapter 4, verses 1 to 12. God's invisible presence. Behind the eloquent story of Ruth looms an invisible helper, God. He didn't intervene in the events so far as the story tells, but nobody in Ruth doubted that life proceeded under God's direction. It was the Lord by whom Ruth swore when declaring her love to Naomi. Check on chapter 1, verse 17. And the Lord, whom Naomi credited for bringing Ruth to Boaz' field. Check on chapter 2, verse 20. God's law brought Boaz and Ruth into marriage. Finally, the Lord gave them a son, in whom mother, father, and grandmother found deep satisfaction. The last verses of Ruth show furthermore that God's plan extended beyond Ruth and Naomi's personal problems. Ruth was a member of the despised Moabites, enemies of Israel. Yet God not only accepted her into his family, but also used her to produce Israel's greatest king. Ruth's great-grandson turned out to be David. To anyone who thought that God's love was for Jews only, Ruth's life made a striking contradiction. How to read the Book of Ruth. Ruth, brief enough to be read in 15 minutes, is a delight. The German Point Goethe called it the loveliest complete work on a small scale. But because Ruth's author didn't hammer his points home, it is possible to overlook his deeper meaning. As you read, concentrate on the loving bond between Ruth and Naomi. This love, which thrived in suffering, is the root of the book. It offers hope for other people in hard circumstances. The author of Ruth assumed that readers understood the cultural and historical background of Ruth's time. You may wish to read about it for deeper understanding. Check on Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10, because that text describes the background on marriage for a widow by a member of her husband's family, the kinsman redeemer. Now Leviticus 25, or chapter 25, verses 22 to 28, gives background on a poor person's property. The introduction to Judges offers historical perspective, for the book of Judges is an overview of the brutal times Ruth lived in. For our reading plans for the Book of Ruth, as usual, we have plans 1 and 2. For plan 1, we have an overview of Ruth in one day. So day 1, read the introduction to Ruth, just like what we've just done, and then proceed to chapter 1, which describes an unusual friendship developing under the unkindness of conditions. So chapter 1 is a book of Naomi and Ruth. Now for plan 2, all of Ruth, or the book of Ruth, in 4 days. So for day 1, chapter 1, again, Naomi and Ruth. For day 2, read chapter 2, Ruth meets Boaz. For day 3, chapter 3, Ruth and Boaz at the threshing floor. Day 4, chapter 4, Boaz marries Ruth.